Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rob Lakin. I am the Creative Director for the Fashion Business School at the London College of Fashion. We'd like to welcome you to the Fashion Business School Summit and to our fashion talks. The summit has been designed to represent the breadth of academic program and specialism. It's an interactive exhibition. I hope you take some time afterwards to go and be inspired. This evening's fashion talks have been inspired by the concept of TED Talks. And as with TED, we believe in the sharing of good ideas as to community, enterprise, entrepreneurship, etc. We have 8 amazing speakers who are going to talk to you this evening. Again, representing our undergraduate, postgraduate, and executive level education programs, and also a breadth of disciplines. Thank you very much. I hope you are inspired.
Hello, everyone. In the expansive universe of retailing, today I'd like to talk about spaces. My recent research is based on third space and how third space can transform that luxury retail experience for the consumer. Third space is a concept that you may well know, or you understand, or it may not be familiar at all. With home as the first space and work as the second space, third space is a hybrid space, a space of community, a social environment, a space to have fun and to relax, to browse and to discover. I recently moved out of a very small, tiny physical space, a less than 600 square foot flat based in Hong Kong. And this tiny little space I called my shoebox. And the shoebox was a sanctuary away from the hustle and bustle of the city life and the busy corporate office. But I used to complain about that shoebox because it was so small. Until, that is, one day, I realized that there are 3 generations of one family living in that same exact space. So then, well, I stopped complaining, but I actually became more creative about that space, and I began to value that space even more, each and every square foot. But I knew I needed more space, a mental space, a space in my mind to allow it to think freely. And that is one of the reasons I decided to pursue the Executive MBA, as it's my own personal third space. A space where I could explore my ideas and my concepts in the areas that interest me, which are in creativity and business. Third space as retail concepts originated in around the 1980s. And these were originally associated with brands such as Starbucks or Nike's Nike Town or the Apple stores. And these were spaces that were beyond just a purchase of a product. These were brand experiences, a multi-sensory, emotive space to hang out in that community. And these spaces have evolved to what we may see as a more sophisticated third space retail concept, such as the recent The Maker's House by Burberry, where that space is used by the brand to showcase the fashion show, but it's also the space to show the collection to the public. Not the VIPs or the press, but actually the public, which in itself is a new concept. And the focus has shifted from the brand as an icon to brand as omnipresent. And brands can offer that multi-sensory, elevated, and integrated, holistic brand experience. And it's also that place to take that all-important selfie. And these third spaces can also be found in the virtual platforms. And these online and e-commerce related spaces that are free from that expensive square foot of real estate have unlimited potential for growth. And brands can differentiate by using social media and videos and augmented and virtual reality experiences to further engage with that client or consumer in that online space. Retailing requires a new paradigm, a space for new ideas and new concepts, new retail strategies and new business models, new ways of telling stories and creating new luxury brand cues to remain competitive and profitable by being relevant to that consumer. And with the global shifting landscapes and the shifting economies in retail, with the new millennial purchasing habits and new consumptions, with the new technology, with wearables and with the innovation and mobile technology, all of these are fueling the demand for instant gratification. And that thirst for that always on and additional and more brand content becomes huge. So in that busyness of everyday life and that demand for your attention and your focus and you, I would just like to invite you to take a moment to explore your own third space. Whether that's when you're painting a picture or journaling or walking your dog, or simply creating that space in your mind where you can allow yourself that blue sky thinking, free from limitations and rules and regulations or boundaries. A space where you can play mind games and play with your ideas, with a childlike wonder, with no limitations, only in a space of possibility. For as we all know, the pace of change in retail is increasing and it will only accelerate. So let's embrace that moment and play mind games and create that pocket of space in your mind where I know where that is where creativity lives. And in that space, you too may discover that tiny spark of a new idea, or that huge breakthrough, or even the next disruptive concept for retail. Thank you. Hello.
So I never wanted to be the annoying person that picks up a quote from the internet in order to appear wise and smart. But in my defense, this quote perfectly sums up the dialogue I'd like to share with you tonight, which is a dialogue about challenging the misconceptions of a Muslim woman and also sharing my perception of being a Muslim woman. But before I start, I'd like to inform you that I'm not here to represent the Muslim community. I'm not here to represent Muslim women. I'm not here to share their stories, their opinions, or their experiences, because they're all individuals. However, I do understand that both voluntarily and involuntarily, I am a representative of the Muslim community because I'm wearing a headscarf. Also, I do identify myself as a Muslim woman. So, let me take you back 20 years ago, where I first came to Europe as a young child. I wasn't initially wearing the headscarf, but 4 years later, it was introduced to me by my parents. No, it wasn't forced. I wasn't oppressed of wearing it. And they allowed me to experiment with it. They allowed me to make it part of my identity. They also allowed me to focus on my characteristics, myself as a person, and to focus on how I contribute to society, to the community, to school, work, and even family and friends. But with time, with age, I also came to realize that the headscarf does attract attention. And it's not a bad thing, but sometimes these attentions were negative. And perceptions of the headscarf have become negative due to past and current world events and affairs. And there's no denying that the headscarf is a religious symbolism. And the first thing that people identify in a Muslim woman is the headscarf. So they're easily identifiable. And most of the time, they become victims of verbal and sometimes even physical abuse, which, let's admit, it's not nice. But with time, a lot of the Muslim women have spent their times trying to challenge these misconceptions. They were, trying to showcase themselves as individuals and be judged by what they do and who they are rather than what they look like. And I'm not denying the fact that some negative misconceptions do exist, and they are reality as well, such as certain Muslim women are oppressed to wear the headscarf, or even the burqa, or even the full-blown abaya, which is the burqa minus the face covering. And I'm not going to deny the fact that there are societies, traditions, and cultures that do oppress these women of wearing the headscarf and covering up. But it would also be denying the fact that these oppressions are just limited to the Muslim community. I think women are oppressed one way or the other, whether they're asked to cover up or whether they're asked to not cover up. Either way, instead of allowing women to have the choice of wearing whatever they please or whatever they want, a lot of societies spend their time arguing what's right for women, what's liberating for women, what's considered freedom for women. So instead of judging or instead of defining what's liberal and not for women, we should allow them to just choose it for themselves. And going back to the headscarf, I understand that oppression is not just limited to the Muslim women, and I understand that what women chooses to wear is not limited to the Muslim community. I mean, understandably, it's a human nature to judge and to build a schema around something or someone, so we familiarize ourselves. So these misconceptions do both come from within the Muslim community and also outside of the Muslim community. It's a constant battle, either way, whatever place the Muslim woman is. So basically what I'm trying to deliver is, instead of making a judgment of what a woman looks like or what a woman chooses to wear, we should be curious and engage with them as individuals. So let's be curious, not judgmental. Thank you.
I'd like to start by asking you all a question. Why do you think it is people act the way they do when shopping in stores? Is it possible to manage a store environment so as to stimulate certain effects in consumer behavior? Well, yes, turns out it is. It has been thoroughly researched, actually, and proven that you can. But if it has been that much researched, why is it some people still hate shopping? Problem is, we don't all react the same way to one environment. So imagine, for example, you enter any high street fashion store and your first reaction might be that the temperature is too hot. Or maybe that they're playing a song you like. But most likely, you're not going to reflect on these aspects separately, because fact is, people interpret an environment holistically. And then, depending on each person's internal response, they will decide to stay or leave. But sometimes it doesn't matter the store. Some people simply hate shopping. And I think we know at least one person like that. In my case, it's my boyfriend. And it's not that he doesn't care about the way he looks or that he doesn't want to buy clothes. He just simply dislikes the entire experience around shopping in stores. And one thing that he doesn't like, in particular, apart from the obvious that it's time-consuming, is that he doesn't trust sales assistants. Everything they say is just to sell. And I know he's not alone. So when I was working as store manager back in Sweden for this contemporary fashion brand, I met several men with similar problems. And interestingly, I was reading this blog the other day, and they were giving the advice not to trust sales assistants blindly, because apparently it's part of their job description to flatter. Does that mean that people are not shopping anymore? Well, not really. So recent market reports actually show that young millennial men are buying more fashion than ever before. And online, about half of these men are looking for advice on size and 30% on style. But there's this difference between the online and the offline environment, whereas you cannot touch or try on a product online. There's a barrier between the consumer and the product. But you can personalize the experience. And personalization, as you all know, is part of many online players' key strategies. So from everything such as personalized advertisements to offering bespoke adjustments. And then this one day, my boyfriend came across this new menswear web shop called Thread. And they are taking personalization to a whole new level by combining a personal stylist with an algorithm. So basically, the main difference between any other web shop is that you get to grade a certain amount of outfits in terms of preference. You get to look at all these pictures and say, this is something I could consider wearing one day, and I would never wear that. So that way, the algorithm learns what you like and what you don't like. And the stylist can make well-informed suggestions. So for my boyfriend, this changed everything. He's a big fan. And again, he's not alone. So in 2013, this company had about 10,000 consumers. Today, they got over 500,000. So does this mean they've solved the trust issue? Well, they got my attention. So I decided to focus my master's project on this company, looking at the consumer's perspective. And my research showed that amongst those 13 men who participated, several were very suspicious towards this personal stylist. Some even suspected that it was a robot. And turns out, nonetheless, about half of the men were still very happy with the personalized experience, but the other half didn't really see the point of it. Some were even a bit annoyed and found it intrusive. Still, actually, it turned out that they were not looking for styling advice from a web shop, and especially not from some unidentifiable person or robot. And amongst those who were looking for styling advice, it's possible that they would trust the algorithm more than they would trust a human sales assistant. So what about the future? What can fashion companies do to successfully attract these young millennial men who hate shopping and don't trust sales assistants? Well, essentially, I believe that this trust issue is a question of transparency. And to decide on a level of transparency, companies should ask themselves, what customer do we want? And do we want to build long-term relationships with these customers? If the answer is yes, well then, like in most other relationships, it is essential to establish a certain level of trust. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Today I'm going to talk about the art of thinking through one's painting. Art, craft, paintings have always been a part of my life. It's just who I am. To me, every scribble, every painting has a story of its own to say. What was the artist thinking? What inspired him? What mood was he in? And so on. This led me to think, where does it all begin? Children. Their first interaction with art and craft begins with a simple doodle on the wall. Now, what is so alluring about this white, big canvas that you have to scribble upon? Is it about starting a new story of your own, or just filling it up with all your emotional colors? As a child, I did a lot of doodles, specifically on the wall, and boy, did I get a whack from my mom for doing so. I did doodles on my school walls. Well, I don't want to go what happened next. So the point here that I'm trying to make here is that if you think doodling is just mindless scribbling, you would be surprised to know that it has many cognitive benefits. In fact, there are studies that understand child psychology based on the doodles they do. At this age, doodling for children is more about action and motion rather than creating a product. It is more about the back and forth movement, the pounding of the crayons, which seems like magic to them. Doodling helps them to build visual intelligence, their kinesthetics, and verbal communication. From infancy to industry, doodling has many powerful and practical applications. In fact, there are many studies that suggest that people who doodle whilst in a meeting, maybe in a talk, tend to retain 29% more of what was said than people who don't doodle. In fact, in corporates, there was another study conducted where corporate managers were asked to express their ideas, not in the form of PowerPoint presentations, but in the form of doodlings. And what was found was they came up with really creative ideas, they could express themselves better, and were much more structured. So, well, I decided to try it and not go on what research says. So the past 3 months, whilst my research on my dissertation was going on, I started doodling. Well, my initial doodles was pretty much depicting my state of mind, a lot to say, didn't know what to say, how to say it, very cluttered. But I realized that as I was doodling, my thoughts became more structured. I started understanding how to express myself better. And moreover, I started to de-stress. It was very relaxing for me. There were times when I would read a textbook and not understand what the author was trying to say. But after doodling for, say, 10 minutes, if I would read the text again, I would completely follow what the author was trying to say. So, what I'm trying to say here is, as time proceeded, my doodlings became more aesthetic, more structured, and more creative, which led me to believe that, yes, it is effective. So, ladies and gentlemen, please do try doodling. Maybe it helps you like it helped me. And it's a hell of a lot of fun. Thank you.
Evening. Hi. Talent is great, but we all know that hard work beats talent every day. Now, we've all felt the squeeze to work faster, more efficiently, and sometimes plate spinning 3, sometimes 4 different seasons. This industry really pushes us. So when I went into my first job, I went up to my manager and said, you know what, the website, the blog, it needs changing a little bit. It just needs to be a little better. Let's add this image, that image. The social media isn't quite merging, it's not really gelling. Maybe we should do user-generated content, get the consumer involved. Now, my manager shut me down straight away, and like, intern, I would need to get these numbers over to the CEO by 10 a.m. It is 9:30 a.m. I need her to do the job I employed her for. I need her to support me. Now, we all started out somewhere, and I was very enthusiastic, but it's common to feel frustrated. How did we get here? I want to be your therapist. Now, us young people, we've grown up very differently with technology at our fingertips, and we can run a business from our laptop in our bedroom. So to us, anything is possible. We are dreamers. So when we come into the workforce, we are very enthusiastic. Now, however, young people, we aren't always right. So, here are some tips if you have a great idea. First of all, step into your boss. They have a lot of responsibility. So shut you down straight away. Just think they are risk averse. Also, do your research. Come with a relevant point. Come with a formulated idea. And also, most importantly, get your timing right. Do not go up to your boss 30 minutes before an important meeting. Now to the managers and the employees that are on the receiving end of these young people. While you are plate spinning all those 3, sometimes 4 different seasons, here are some tips to create the perfect dynamic working environment. First of all, listen. If someone is already speaking about their ideas and expressing their thoughts, that is great. And you showing that you're listening is positive affirmation. 2, make time. Maybe schedule in your weekly meeting at the end for everybody in your team to share their ideas. This will make them feel validated. And 3, seek them out. You'll be doing more than 90% of the managers out there, and you'll be promoting that collaboration between manager and team worker. But, I mean, there are so many successful brands that are only successful because of their collaborations. Supreme. So, putting productivity aside, let's keep and encourage the ideas of the future. Thank you.
Happiness. Is it expectations or is it experiences? Maybe it's a bit of both. The anticipation of an experience drives our happiness, and so does the reward of the experiences itself. The concept and the perception of happiness differs from one person to another, from one culture to another. Looking forward to something is a key component in any formula to happiness. Our prior mood affects our level of happiness. It's as if happiness works in 3 dimensions: the past, the present, and the future. When I'm sad, I find myself going out and buying my favorite brand. As if shopping is a form of therapy. Anu Jalesia is using shopping as a form of stress relief or relaxation. We feel sad when we're not getting a positive outcome from an investment, either in love, life, or work. We feel sad when we're no longer in control. Sadness is simply your mind telling you to stop and think. Maybe that person, activity, or job was not a good thing. Going out and buying our favorite brands helps us restore our sense of control, helps us restore a positive emotional state. Emotional low is a condition felt after shopping. During shopping, a brain area called nucleus accumbens floods with dopamine, a neurotransmitter responsible for stress, for desire, and pleasure. It's in fact the same chemical released during sex or cocaine use. It's fired up at the moment during and after shopping to immediately suppress any feelings of guilt or anxiety. These positive feelings, however, normally crashes afterwards. My recent research shows that consumption, precisely luxury consumption, can in fact improve your affective and cognitive well-being. It can increase your positive emotions, decrease the negative ones, and improve your overall well-being. If you're someone who experiences this when you consume, you are a materialistic person. The higher the level of materialism, the more likely you're able to use consumption as a form of therapy, as a form to regain your control, as a form to regain a positive emotional mind and state. The pursuit of consumption can to an extent divert people from long-term goals. Long-term goals that can truly make them happy, leading to negative consequences that can affect things that are truly valued, things that can make you happy. However, consumption has a lot of benefits. It gives people incentives to work harder, to innovate, leading to a higher level of production and economic growth, boosting the aggregate demand, and reducing the unemployability. And most importantly, it makes you happy. Usually that happiness is short-term, but some principles can help you make it long-term. Limit your access to your favorite brands. Don't make it a habit. Wait till the end of the month and consume that one thing you've been wanting for so long. Invest in others. I've recently repurchased a handbag, but this time it wasn't for myself, it was for my mom. And the level of satisfaction and happiness that I get when I see her wearing it is greater than when I wear it myself. Buy time. Take your time to check alternatives, to check all the options. That will yield wiser consumptions. It will make you regret your purchase even less. Buy now, consume later. The simplest example would be shopping online. You pay now, and you experience the most amazing feelings when you're about to receive your parcel. Buy experiences. And I'm not talking about going out and buying a concert ticket or a ticket trip to Bali. I'm talking about choosing your materialistic consumption based on experience that you're going to yield through it. For example, during Christmas time, you would go to any store in Oxford Street and you will be handed in a glass of bubbly. That way, you actually create a memory from that shopping experience. What is the true meaning of happiness? Everyone should be allowed to experience and pursue happiness in the way they see fit. Take your time and allow yourself to build sentimental and emotional connections with each materialistic object that you consume. Allow yourself to enjoy the experience of shopping. As a brand and a business, forget about forecasting and expectations and targeting certain people. Focus on creating the ultimate experience that through it the consumer can create a memory. Experiences on their own are worthless. Memories of the consumer experiences are priceless. Create the formula to happiness. Create memories for the consumer. Thank you.
Well, tonight, I'm going to be the guy who will talk to you about something that doesn't exist. And we all know it doesn't exist. Yet, we think we are it. And I'm talking about the Homo Economicus. By far, this Latin phrase describes more than just a gay economist. But it is defined as the idea that we as humans are always rational, basing our decisions on evidence and not emotions, and thus always make decisions which lead to success. And success in business terms means money. The idea of the Homo Economicus stems from nearly all the financial and economical models that are out there, because they all assume that we follow their model. That we follow this process, we follow this equation, this theory, and no matter who does it, expert or amateur, we all come to the same output. This area applies to many, but tonight I would like to particularly focus on one area which is A, relevant to fashion, and B, where you can clearly see the non-existence of the Homo Economicus, and that is forecasting. But if I now say to you fashion and forecasting, you might have this image in your head of the buyers and designers jetting off glamorously around the world for trips to find future innovation and trends, or just wasting company money. But this is fashion business. And as it says on the wall, fashion means business. And what do businesses do? They do numbers, they do cash, they do spreadsheets. So naturally, within a fashion business, you also have a group of people who do make financial forecasts. And typically, in many businesses, that is the merchandiser. Homo Economicus? No. It doesn't exist, remember? But why do I keep on telling you that? Why do I keep on claiming that it doesn't exist? Well, quite simply put, it has to do with our brain. Because we all harbor those little flawed and distorting thinking processes called biases. For example, if you ask somebody who they think in their graduating year will be the first one to become CEO of a FTSE 100 company, they're most likely to say themselves. But if you ask the same person who they think, okay, who in your graduating year will end up being divorced first or end up being an alcoholic, they're most likely to say the person they couldn't stand. So if you exhibit this perception that we almost are always 100% in control of our life and everything that's happening around it, that thinking is called the over-optimism bias. And it does occur in forecasting too, when you have, for example, a merchandiser who forecasts a sales figure because he or she is convinced that with the little control they have, they can achieve that sales figure. But we all know that a merchandiser can merely control the stock levels or where they place the stock, but can they control the weather? Can they control general stock, the general market in the UK? Another situation. Quite frequently in amongst more experienced contemporaries is what I would like to call the gut trusters. I have 30 years worth of experience in this industry. I simply know we're going to make £1 million worth of sale next season. Yes, but Mr. 30 years worth of experience, do you actually go back and have checked how accurate your previous forecasts were? And do you trust hard evidence more than your own emotions or your gut feelings? Well, if you answer both questions with no, congratulations, you're exhibiting the overconfidence bias. So as you can see from those two biases I've just explained, biases have a lot to do with our perception. They change perception of our external environment. It's the case with over-optimism, or they change the perception of our own abilities, as it is with overconfidence. But biases can do more. They can also change how we perceive numbers. So I'm just going to ask you, make a rough estimate up in your minds. How many people do you think walk through Selfridges on Oxford Street on a peak day? Well, the answer is 120,000. But I'm sure, except for those who knew, that this number might be a bit surprising, that you might have guessed roughly maybe around the likes of that number here. Because you were anchoring. And this is an anchor. Because our mind has the tendency to always assign disproportionate value to the first set of information that we receive. Whether it is a slide on a wall, or it is a comment from a coworker, or something we just read in a newspaper. And in fact, this bias is amplified if we have an anchor or a figure that is perceived to be solid. And what is more solid than last year's sales figure printed out on a piece of paper in a report in front of you when you're doing next season's forecast? But this is where in many fashion businesses the journey starts. When you forecast next season, you go back to the previous season. Is this something a Homo Economicus would do? Well, if you ever meet one, send them around to Marks & Spencer's or Supergroup, as both of these companies have blamed their wrong forecasts in the past for losses they've made. So as this shows, biases are a financial and psychological risk that fashion businesses need to address in the future if they want to safeguard their competitive advantage. But as with many things in life, awareness is key. Thank you.
I know a girl that has 7 national championship titles. She gets A's in nearly every exam that she ever does. She has a degree from her dream university and a job in her dream company. But if you ask her what her most vivid memory was, she won't tell you of these amazing accomplishments. She'll tell you about the time that she failed her grade 3 piano exam and cried for 3 days straight. Perfectionism. As we all know, this equates to faultlessness or flawlessness. And perfectionism, in psychology, is the personality trait of setting excessively high performance standards, often leading to overly critical self-evaluations. But what if imperfections were a good thing? About a year or so ago, I came across a TED Talk by Carol Dweck. She writes the book, The Mindset, and within this, she discusses the idea of the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. The fixed mindset, also known as the CEO disease, is a way of black and white thinking, where you're either good at something or you're not. This way of thinking believes that people have innate abilities to do certain things, and those are the things they should pursue, and they'll never be able to do anything outside of that remit. Now, the growth mindset is much more of a colourful way of thinking, and it believes that you can do anything that you're passionate about, as long as you're willing to put in the time, the hard work, the effort and the dedication. Plus, you need to accept that you will make failures along the journey or the route to success. After all, you weren't born running, you walked, you fell, and you got back up. More recently, I came across a book by Rod Judkins. Rod is a lecturer at Central St Martin's, but he also wrote the book, The Art of Creative Living. And within this book, it's a great book, by the way, he discusses ideas like the perks of ignorance, and that there's no shame in not knowing something. But for me, his chapter about perfection really stood out, where he discussed lots of different concepts about how when you seek a perfect goal, you are seeking a linear path to one full stop. So why are we not trying to pursue question marks? Maybe what I'm trying to say is there's no shame in not knowing. Did you know that perfection in its maladaptive form directly correlates with many serious mental health conditions? Did you know that 1 in 4 people currently suffer from a mental health illness in any given year? 20% of all adolescents are currently suffering from a serious mental health condition. And 10% of all children under the age of 16 are currently suffering from a clinically diagnosable mental health illness. I was one of these adolescents, diagnosed at the age of 18 with severe depression and an eating disorder. Why did this happen? Well, I felt out of control of one part of my life, and that just happened to be my body weight. And that's when my perfectionistic personality trait decided to kick in. And I decided I was going to be the best I could possibly be at losing weight. So I began counting calories, I began exercising, and I watched the number on the scale drop. But what I failed to see was the fact that I was slowly and painfully killing myself. But hey, I was still losing weight. A fixed mindset. Now, the recovery process for me was one of the most difficult things I have ever done, and it took about 5 years to do. And within this time, it was a constant grey area, because recovery for everybody is totally different. And within this process, you are forced to try new things every single day, and there is no perfect end goal. So within this, I failed over and over and over again. But altogether, I can honestly say that I am now the strongest that I have ever been. What is this? A growth mindset? Now, this idea of this mentality of failing fast and learning faster is definitely seen in many successful businesses today. Everyone knows Google, right? If you don't, I don't know where you've been for the last 10 years. But there's actually a website called Google Graveyard, and on this website, you can see digital gravestones all in a row of all different Google ideas that have either been discontinued or totally failed. Think iGoogle, Google Answers, or Google Talks. Now on this, you can actually donate flowers to these ideas in mourning, and you can actually see there are some that have up to 250 flowers donated to them. So clearly someone cared about these ideas. But what's interesting to me is this idea that many of these projects actually developed into things that we all use today. How many of you have a Gmail account? Now, you can actually see this idea developing into many fashion companies today as well. So think Selfridges. 3 times a year, they refresh their creative campaign. And within this, they try different ideas, and they're not always designed to reach a monetary goal. They're sometimes designed to reach a conversation starter. And hey, let's just see what happens. Think Agender, which was genderless dressing, or Project Ocean, where they cut out the selling of all single-use plastic water bottles. Think about it. Plastic water bottles are a huge volume monetary driver. This could have made a huge difference to their margins. But today, Project Ocean is still running, and it's getting bigger and bigger. Another example is the brand Aerie. Aerie is under the parent brand of American Eagle. And Aerie decided in 2014 they were going to start the campaign Aerie Real. Aerie Real is a campaign where they decided to scrap all retouching on all of their imagery. And within this, you see campaigns with models with their moles, with their freckles, with their body rolls, with their scars on full display on billboards for everybody to see. Now, this could have massively put off consumers, especially in a climate where we're surrounded by imagery of digitally enhanced people that don't even exist. What did we see? Aerie's profits rose 20% year on year. Now, in comparison to their parent brand, American Eagle, who only lifted 7%. What does that tell you? Now, my talk was always meant to share my knowledge. So I'm going to leave you with a couple thoughts to take with you. 1, is there something that you've always wanted to do? Something that you're massively passionate about, but you've always been told you shouldn't do that. You weren't born with the ability to do that. My advice, try it. See what happens. I guarantee if you put in enough hard work and dedication, you'll at least learn one thing. Are you currently working on a project and you're busting your gut for this one idea, but it's not going anywhere? My advice, take a step back. Have a look at all of the different things that you have tried along that way. Some of them you may have disregarded straight away. I guarantee at least one of those ideas will be able to set you on a path to a whole new idea. In the words of Oscar Wilde, I've always been more interested in an experiment than in an accomplishment. And yes, I did fail my grade 3 piano exam, but I'm not perfect, and that's okay. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the Fashion Business School Fashion Talks. I would like you to put your hands together for all our amazing speakers. And I invite you to go and have a look at our exhibition. Thank you very much.